Coach, in watching Jordan Brooks and David Long play together for the first time in game action, I can't help but think about the fast, physical, elite technique principle. I'm curious how you view those guys through that vein, that principle.
Yeah, those guys exemplify all of those terms, right? I think you saw that they not only were out there communicating and trying to take command of the defense, but they were hitting everything moving. And whenever you have that at the inside backer position, that's intimidating, and ultimately that's what we're looking for.
I want to ask you about corner, obviously with Cam Smith out sometime. Do you feel like you have enough behind Jalen and Kendall and Cater? Obviously with Bonner, the three rookies, Saran, Nick Needham. What gives you confidence if you do believe you have enough in that group after number 3?
Yeah, I have the utmost confidence in all those guys who aren't as heralded, let's say, because their approach to work is the same each and every day. So even the guys that have been in the system, been around the league for a while, they're still approach each day with the mindset of getting better. And when you have that, it doesn't matter like where you are slotted in the depth chart, you're going to improve and you're going to make strides. And ultimately, you saw that in the second half of games for us. Those are guys who aren't necessarily pegged as starters, but they go out there and they play very well. And so I have the utmost confidence because of that.
With Jalen Phillips, how much do you think early on you can count on him? Like, I obviously how his body responds is a big part of it, but are you planning, hey, we can get 50 snaps out of this guy week 1, or is it going to be something that comes along?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to listen to his body, right? Ultimately, I don't think you want to put a number count on that kid, but we know we have to be smart in how we approach it so that he can maintain and last throughout the entire season. But I'm certainly not counting that kid out of anything, right? You saw how fast he's gotten back from the Achilles, and he looks like a man-child out there when he has gone.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how he's performed in practice.
Yeah, he's looked great. He's great. He looks like the Jalen Phillips we all expect to see.
What have you seen from the edge rushers as a group? We know Ogbah's the veteran. Quentin Bell has maybe cooled off in the joint practices and preseason games. Chop and Mo are youngsters. Jalen might be limited. But as a group, what are you seeing from these edge rushers?
I love that group. Going into the season, I think there's probably a question mark there just because of the injuries that have occurred towards the end of last season. But each and every guy has shown promise and has showed that they can do something positively for this defense. So I'm incredibly excited about the young bucks, right? You're talking about Muhammad. You saw glimpses of them in the last preseason games and what they're capable of. So I think we have all the talent in the world in that room. And just like the cornerback position, I think Ryan Crowe does an incredible job with those guys. And they just approach each and every day with purpose and intent to go out there and try to get better at their craft. And as long as we approach each day that way, like, I don't care who's out there for us. They're gonna do something positive for the group.
How would you assess Channing Tindall's training camp / preseason?
I'm so proud of that kid, just because I know nobody puts more pressure on himself than he does because of where he was drafted and what he wants to be in this league. So he's just come out every day and gotten better. Coach Barry, Coach O'Donnell, they've invested in him, and he's soaking it all in, and now you see the results of that on the field. So incredibly proud of that kid and the strides he's made. And I think he still is on the ascending. He's still on the climb. So just really excited for him.
When you talked about Cam Smith a couple of weeks back, you mentioned confidence being an issue for him and being a key in his development. Would that apply to Channing as well a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Whenever you don't have early success in this league, that could lead to doubt. And you certainly don't want that as an NFL player. You don't want that on any level of playing any sport. So the only way to eliminate that doubt is through preparation. And when you go out there and work every day, ultimately you'll have results, and hopefully we can build confidence that way.
Isaiah Mack and Jonathan Harris are two guys that I think that I've seen flash at different times. What do you want to see from them today, Wednesday, and Friday? The game's Friday, right? Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah. Just like these other guys, I just want to see a consistent approach to work. The results will take care of themselves. But as long as you go each and every day and when we're on that field, if you take advantage of that time, because we're not on the field long, right? You can't be here in South Florida. So as long as we maximize our time when we're on that field, when we're in the meeting room, and we're just trying to go out there and just be the best versions of ourselves, the rest will shake itself out. But those guys, I tell you what, you talk about guys that compete and care and get ball and want to be a contributing member of this team, that's each and every one of those guys.
I want to ask you about two of the rookie corners. With Storm Duck, what skill has stood out, and what's intrigued you about Anthony Johnson's skill set?
Man, they're very different in terms of skill set, right? I think Isaiah's big, tall, and long, Storm's a little bit shorter, but he's quick, has great long speed. But all those young guys, you can throw Jason Maitre, right, Patrick Morris, that young defensive back group, I tell you what, they're here early every morning. They're doing everything they can to try to digest as much information as possible. And typically when that happens, there's a little bit of paralysis through analysis. But these guys have been able to take that information and then have it translate onto the field fairly quickly. So, man, I tell you what, I'm not counting any of those kids out to potentially help us this season. We'll see how the roster shakes out and things like that. But however it shakes out, those kids should have zero regrets about the work they've put in thus far.
Talked to a few guys about you and your style, and they all kind of talked about your passion, your teaching. But what stood out is they were talking about how personable you were with them individually. I'm curious how you developed that style as you've gone along your coaching career.
Oh, man, I mean, shoot, I'm just trying to be authentic and be myself, right? I'm not trying to be anything else. I believe coaching is service work. So in order to get the best out of people, you got to get to know them, right? You can't just be on this mountaintop and be a dictator and just bark down orders at people. People don't respond to that. So ultimately, like, I know where I stand. I know what the chain of command is, but we are all coworkers ultimately. And I'm trying to make sure that I can be a force multiplier in whatever capacity I can, not just with the defensive guys, but with the offensive guys, with the coaches on staff, offense and defense. Like, I'm trying to help this team win a Super Bowl. So anything I can do to help, I'm going to do that.
We've got a weather question for you. I asked Jordan Poyer about this. Have you noticed an advantage with the heat and humidity? Did you notice it against Atlanta, against Washington? Can it be a factor against Jacksonville and Buffalo?
Yeah, it's different, right? It's certainly different. You would think it would be an advantage versus Buffalo, just what they're doing up in, I don't know if they still go to Rochester, but it's certainly not what we're going through here. Jacksonville, you would think, they're in Florida. They should be okay, but it should certainly be an advantage, particularly early in the season, right? If you're not acclimated to it, it's certainly going to hit you in the face early. And ultimately, like, it's football, right? If you're getting 3 and outs, it's not going to affect you that much. So we got to keep them on the field offensively and defensively. We got to get them off quick.
What was your final record in coaching staff basketball?
I certainly wasn't a losing one. Let's say that. Let's say that. Now we did mix the teams from time to time, but let's just say I'm glad the season ended when it did, because tempers were starting to flare a little bit. You got a lot of competitive juices flowing out there. So
Are you a power forward?
I like to consider myself like a slash player. Sometimes I go do work underneath the rim. Sometimes I go out and shoot threes. Come on, Bees, I'm an athlete. I mean, come on. Let's not peg me into like just a big rebounder or something like that.
Who's the most intense out there?
Joe Barry. No, I take that back. It's probably Austin Clark. All right, it's definitely Austin Clark. He doesn't know what a hard foul is. Let's just say that.
Not surprised.
I was going to ask you, on the football front, with B. Jones obviously out for a little over a week, gotten a lot of snaps from Peely. What stood out to you about him? Is there an NFL body and skill set there, do you think?
Yeah, Peely has all the attributes to go out there and be a productive NFL interior lineman. He's still learning the finer things of playing the position, but he has all the skill in the world. And just like all these other guys I've talked about, like, he comes to work like bright-eyed, ready to go. And as long as you do that, and then you take the coaching and try to apply it on the field, like, you'll get the results. So certainly pleased in where he's trending so far in his early career.
Coach, how did Chop and Mo specifically respond, not only when the lights came on at the stadium on Saturday, confirmed Saturday, sorry, it's an inside joke.
Yeah, I don't know what date is it.
Not just when the lights turned on, but also when they're facing somebody at joint practice that doesn't have the same jersey as them.
Yeah, those two. Let me go back to the Atlanta game. I've never seen two people so disappointed that they weren't able to take the field. Like, they were like genuinely distraught. Now, when they got under the lights, like, nothing changed for them. They just went out and continued to do the same thing they'd done in practice, which try to apply the coaching and let your technique and fundamentals allow you to make plays. Now, I joked with Mo because Chop has his TFL, And then maybe like a few plays later, Muhammad makes his play. I was like, oh, you felt like you had to catch up, right? You felt like you were behind. So they have a little bit of a healthy competition between each other. They love each other. They work together. But you need that, right? You're always chasing something. And just that little internal rivalry between the two of them is pretty cool.
Regarding your secondary, I don't know how much time the five of them have been out there together with Cater. How much time do they need together before they face Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen in weeks 1 and 2?
Yeah, we certainly have to. We have to get the defense as a whole out there together, right? And there's a couple guys that are battling through some small injuries, but I have the utmost faith in all those guys because they've played so much football, right? The collective football IQ of all those guys is so high that I don't think it'll take long for us to get on the same page and gel together. So even though they're not necessarily out there taking full speed reps all the time in practice, they are getting a ton of jog through reps. I mean, they're always talking, communicating in meetings, and you try to steal reps that way.
Time for a few more. Do you see Marcus's, I guess, tell me how you see Marcus's role with the Dolphins in 2024?
Marcus, sorry, Blake.
Smith.
Oh shoot, double M. I mean, God, did you see him in the game? The guy was flying around, hitting everything. I love Marcus. I love his professionalism. I love his toughness. He is a guy that it's incredible. He started for 7 years in this league, yet he approaches practice like he's a rookie, and he's learning and he has something to prove. So I think that says everything about him. If you're a young player and you don't look to Marcus May as an example of what it means to be a pro, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Have you identified maybe 1, 2, 3 guys that are going to be your leaders on defense, your maybe coaches on the field this season?
It's tough for me to identify just 3 because I think leadership is plural, right? At any particular moment, you could be called on to be a leader. And do we have guys that are certainly going to be at the forefront of that? For sure, absolutely. But I certainly don't want to pigeonhole any one player into that role because if you're one of those 11 guys on that field and the ball's coming your way, lead. Lead and do your job. So, to say there's a few, I guess you can anoint people, but ultimately, I want everybody that's on this defense to be a leader.
How's Bradley Chubb doing in his rehab, and what's his mindset?
I tell you what, you talk about a guy that is just attacking his rehab, right, with a fierce intensity, but still has an incredible effect on all of the guys in the locker room. That is like the ultimate sign of a leader and a pro, because I've been in his shoes, and when you're not out on that field, sometimes you feel like it's hard to step into that leadership role. But I just think it shows the amount of influence and the regard that his teammates have for him, that he is able to lead in such an incredible capacity when he's not out there. I love him and appreciate his work. I see it every day and can't wait for him to get it back out on the field.
What stood out to you from Javon, this year and maybe his development?
Yeah, Javon wants to be great, right? And there were examples that I showed the defensive guys where literally he'd be on the 10-yard line and run to the opposite pylon, in pursuit, just trying to make a play. And when you're constantly preaching uncommon effort from your players and your leaders like Javon are showing you now visually, this is what it is, how easy is that for me as a coach to now hold everybody else to that same standard? So dealing with some things right now, but when he's out there, you can see the impact that he's going to have on this defense. The safety position is incredibly important. I think if you look back at the Baltimore tape and just the history of the Ravens, you know how valued that position is. So there's certainly excitement for what he can do when he gets out there.
Of course, wouldn't ask you about who, in your view, is leading backup QB battle. I would never ask you that, but I would ask you this. Is the margin between the two, do you think, extremely slim, or do you think one of them has created a little bit of distance over the other?
I mean, I don't necessarily know if you're saying it's, this or that. I mean, I think it's ultimately comes down to when we're looking at in training camp each day, what are we trying to accomplish? How are we trying to get better? How are we trying to execute what we're trying to do? And I think that's where it's you look at this time of camp and you really want to make sure that you're maximizing each day, especially when, installs go down. We're repeating a lot of the similar concepts. And I think that with the guys, the next couple of days of work are going to be really vital. And we're excited to practice today and get to Tampa and finish up training camp.
Frank, yesterday Mike was talking about the benefits of the approach you're using with the backup quarterbacks, more or less making life as difficult as possible for them.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing as the benefits in helping you judge who's the man for the job?
It's funny because the way you're holding your phone, it feels like COVID. I can just see you nose it up, you're kind of hiding behind there.
I'm sitting next to him.
I know, gotta move the camera down now. I think just ultimately when you're what do you try and get done in practice? What do you try and get done at this time of year? You want to put guys in challenging situations and put them in situations where they feel uncomfortable, so you can simulate game performance as much as you can. So ultimately, with every position as we're looking at it, we want to make training camp situations where we have to problem solve, we have to work through things, so that way we're trying to make sure that we prepare them or guys just in general for the season, what comes and the challenges that come, especially at quarterback. There are many layers to play in their position.
I don't have COVID.
Yeah, no doubt. I could tell, man. It was just funny. I was flashback. I couldn't see your mouth and you were talking to me. I was just whoa. I got to move the camera down. How? Anyways, flashback.
How much have you enjoyed getting to use Jonnu Smith in all these different ways, and just can you speak to how much he can add to the offense, being able to get creative with him?
Yeah, just our tight end group in general. Guys that have physicality who really enjoy playing the position of the blocking, play action passing game, to keep everything that we ask them to do, they do a great job. And Jonnu, it's funny for me to see him because I coached him at the Senior Bowl on the team he was on. So to watch him and see how his career's gone has been awesome. Because, when you work with those guys at that time, you kind of okay. And him, you knew, this guy's going to be a good pro. And he's going to have a long career. So to have him on our team and using his skill set, it's been awesome. And just seeing how he's fitting with the guys, fitting into, knowing what he's going to be able to bring, he's really excited for this season, and so are we.
Is Isaiah Wynn someone you can even plan at this point, or having early in the season? Is he someone that's part of the calculus, or is it just, hey, when we get him back, we'll get him back? It's
just when guys are working through stuff, they're on their process to get better. Ultimately, it's they focus on their daily process to get themselves ready, but ultimately it's we just always have to base it on today and where we're trying to get what we have available now, and then the contingencies and stuff like that are things that we worry about at other times, especially after we get through training camp, when you start weighing out what things can play out with different guys and where they're at. But ultimately, he's working his butt off like he always does, and when the day comes, we'll factor that in. But right now, we're just excited with the way the rest of the group has been playing and how they've been developing from spring all the way into to camp to today.
Frank, quick follow-up on Jonnu. What was it you saw in him at the Senior Bowl that told you this guy's going to be a player?
The way he went about he was just locked in. He was attentive in meetings. He would take emphasis points to the field. Route running, you can just see when he was coming out of FIU, certain things were new to him, but he was just a guy who got football. He got it fast. Things, you can always tell when guys are coming out of college when you're explaining things, and they go, got it. And he had that, and then you could just see he's a very confident guy. You can just see, yeah, I'll back then, yeah, I'll figure that out. And you're I'm sure you will. So, it was just, you could see a real confident guy who understood football, and it's no surprise he's had the career he's had.
Coach, on the Jonnu Smith jet sweep pop pass on Saturday night, it looked like the defense kind of followed Tua's action to the fake handoff. We hear a lot about his ball handling, but I'd love to hear from your perspective what his ball handling does to kind of accentuate this offense.
I think that's just ultimately something we try and do in different phases of the run game, different actions we do. It's, their ability to see the ball and play the ball is things that we try and utilize to use in all the plays we use, whether it's run game, play action pass, or different things we use like that with Jonnu. So I think ultimately our ability to do multiple ball handlings helps a lot, because I think in the run game, that's how you can get you can manipulate defenders and try and create space to attack. And it's great to have different guys to be able to use in different ways to really challenge the defense and make them defend all width of the field.
Go ahead.
Frank, we heard from Alec last week. There's a quote that stands out where he said, "You guys are pushing the limits of what this offense can do." And I know it's kind of an open-ended question, but what does that look like for the number one offense from a season ago to keep pushing the limits of what it's capable of?
I think it comes down to when you have the guys understand more of the core principles of what we're looking to do, and then now, when we're trying maybe a different movement to execute this similar things we're doing, so they understand the core principle of what we're doing. But now as we add different wrinkles, understanding of how this can impact a defense's reaction and be able to execute what we're doing. So I think as you understand, what the play is and how you fit, and then now, okay, what if we move to it from this way, or if we line up in this formation and try and do it this way, so the defense's recognition of us might be different. I think that's the big thing that they can understand now, because they understand when you're first learning an offense, you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I need to be? What are we trying to do? In your second year, okay, I know where I'm supposed to be, kind of know what I'm supposed to do, but now I'm really kind of taking that next step of really understanding it. Now as they know where they need to be, what they need to do, okay, what if we try and attack this way? You know what I mean? They go, oh, because they already know those baselines, so now they can see this next layer and how it fits, and then they can own their element of, okay, I see where it fits, so if you guys want to move from this formation to try and do that concept, okay, I see the reaction, because they're beyond looking at their part of the puzzle, being right. They're now seeing the reaction of, oh, I see now what the defense is trying to do and how we're trying to manipulate it. So that's the layer, and that's what you get through the the consistency of being able to get into year 3 of the program. And the guys are just, we have a group that's really hungry to, hey, let's challenge the threshold. Let's make it hard now, so that way when we get to the season, there's more carryover of things we're doing, as opposed to, trying to limit hey, this is new maybe in October, as opposed to now, hey, we're pushing the envelope, we're trying to make it new now, so it's just more repetition as we get into the season.
And just to follow real quick, it sounds like it's just kind of it's a natural progression of when you're able to implement the same system 3 years in a row. Is this kind of a rare stage to be in the NFL? Because it doesn't feel like a lot of teams get 3 back-to-back years of having the same core staff in place.
I don't know if it's use the word rare, but I think it's it's the benefit of year 3, and I think it's also the benefit of having the guys we have that are hungry to, do the same thing over and over again. Okay, and at the same time, how do you make training camp challenging? Well, we push the envelope with things, because some things, hey, we do it and didn't necessarily play out the way we thought. So, okay, we see that maybe that wasn't as good. Okay, this did. Okay, everyone see it, connect everyone together of how we can utilize it. So it's a lot of times when you can experiment and really, see what will work. And that's what we try and use training camp for. It's you get through your installation, but then now, okay, how can we take these core principles and then make it look like it's something different, but yet it isn't. It's there's carryover to us, but the defense might see a whole nother recognition of things going on.
Frank, I wanted to ask you about short yardage. I think you had 4 chances on that first drive, both third or fourth or short, 3 runs, some success, but you had the touchdown, the pass. How would you assess running the football in short yardage on Saturday night or whenever it was, Friday night?
Yeah, it's what day is it? Oh, no, I walked in here, I thought it was Thursday. I thought ultimately, we understood, the situation. We understood our emphasis and execution. Ultimately, in training camp, there's a little bit of like we're installing core principles. There's game planning, but it's not to the layers of because you just know you don't know when you're going to get hit with the situations in camp and who will be in. But as far as like overall, when you look at like short yards or like red zone third down in the preseason, you're looking at execution of the group, understanding the situation and what we need. And you can see the intent with the guys, the purpose of the runners, everyone trying to execute. So we felt good about it, but ultimately we know where we can clean up in the blocking schemes and stuff like that.
Frank, I wanted to gauge your mindset as far as Odell. I'm sure you're excited to get him out there. Are you more of the I'm patient, it'll happen when it happens, or are you kind of, the opener's 3 weeks away, I want to experiment and tinker with what we've got here?
I think it's ultimately like when you're dealing with guys that are working through their process, you ultimately have to be patient because what happens is like, especially with veterans, they know what they need to do to be ready to go. And it's that communication between them and the staff that's the most important thing. Because the worst thing you want to do is, hey, I'm good and not stick to the process in each day. And each day it's about, okay, what was the work that need to get done today to, keep us on the journey we need to get where we need to be.
Last one. They're good.
I want to ask you one on the young receivers. Obviously, you're down to two, unless Waddle is able to come back to practice today. Tyreek and Braxton are your only receivers who are healthy, who really have much NFL playing time under their belt. Do you think Azukama and Malik Washington, from what they've shown you, can help you come September 8th if needed? And why, if so?
I think that's the great part about training camp is like guys are coming in and out, working through things. Guys get opportunities to show where they're at and what they can do. So with camp this year, opportunities for different guys at different positions, you can see they're maximizing it. And at the wide receiver, it'll be the next couple of days will be really great opportunities for the guys to show what they're going to do. As far as Malik and Eric, I've had good camps. You can see, it was great to have Eric and to have the production we had in the game the other night. So ultimately, when you look at it, it's a body of work, and then now, okay, what do we learn from that body of work for the next couple of days? Because, there's a lot to get done in the next 3 days between our practice today with Tampa and the game that we can really factor in. And, just can't say enough about just the guys in general and all the work they put in and really their emphasis to get better each day, especially the wide receivers.
So you obviously have a reliable returner in Braxton. I wanted to ask you what you've seen from Malik Washington as far as return skills over the last several weeks.
Yeah, I thought he's done a very good job making good decisions, fearless with the ball in his hands. Obviously some things to work on, but very happy with what he's been able to accomplish in the preseason.
Danny, what have you learned in the preseason about the new kickoff?
Wow, a whole lot. I think it's still a work in progress. When you look at all the kicks around the league, some of them, I think some teams are playing it like it's a game, and you're seeing some different concepts, both from a return aspect and a coverage aspect. Some of the other teams are, a couple teams are just hitting touchbacks, whether that's going to be their philosophy and their plan, or that's just something they're doing in the preseason, you don't know. But it's been very, very interesting, and it's fun to come in and spend a bunch of hours doing something you wouldn't normally do, and you're seeing a lot of interesting things from a technique standpoint, from a concept standpoint. So, but I think it's still a work in progress, and like I've said all along, I think it's going to be a work in progress till you get 4, 5, 6 weeks in the league.
Obviously, if I can just follow, obviously everybody's got a different perspective, but how much of what we've seen so far do you think is the real version versus maybe people just giving the vanilla because they don't want to hide their state secrets?
Don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's what's, as I said, that's what will be interesting. The teams that have been the heavy touchback teams, is that going to be their philosophy, or is that, as you said, they just don't want to show what they're truly going to do? So it's going to be fun.
When you say game, you're saying more like offense, defense concepts being incorporated into the special teams play as well?
No, but there's always concepts. Special teams is, return game, coverage teams. It's still concepts and plays. It's just, with the space eliminated, those things changed. And then you get to the point of, okay, well, what is going to work? What's not going to work? There's landmark rules now for both sides that they've tweaked a little bit in terms of how many guys can be in certain spots. And so there's things that are ever evolving. And then you got to tie in that with personnel, which is, I'm sure, coming down the road here with, who is doing what. There's some good techniques things I think I've seen, but because of the matchup not being a great matchup, it doesn't work. But I think there's still some merit to what you're doing. It's just got to marry the matchup with the personnel.
Speaking of personnel, sorry, Bees. We've seen Justin Reed with the Chiefs kind of be the safety kicking. Have you had a long list of guys raising their hand and saying I kicked off in college or high school? Or
Not a long list.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few, but not a long list. Not as long as the returner list.
Philosophically, are you a gambler? Do you like going for the extra yards, or are you a guy who's like, hey, give me my 30-yard line and I'm happy?
No, by nature, I'm a gambler, but again, it's not Danny Crossman. This is Miami Dolphins. So there's a lot of things yet to be ironed out with the Miami Dolphins in terms of how we're going to play the game, when we want to do certain things. So those things, those are a joint discussion of a lot of people. But I like the idea of the play, and I think it can be fun. It's going to be negative at times. There's going to be big plays against you at the same time. But I like the concept and I like the idea of what this play could be.
And follow up, having the explosive offense on your side, does that kind of recalibrate your thinking a little bit too? Like if you guys are a defense and special teams team, old school football, maybe you'd want to gamble a little bit more. But the fact that Tyree can go 80 yards on a play.
Again, I think it's going to be all those things tied together, and it could change week by week. It could change based on who we're playing. It could change based on weather. It could change on a lot of things. But I think those are constant communication things that are going to have to take place on, how to play the game, when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. And it's just like you see on defense. Hey, we have a great blitz package, but hey, we're up 12. Is this a time to roll the dice with a blitz? Yeah, it could end the game, but it could also bring the other team back in. So all those things will continue to evolve as we go through the season.
Go ahead.
I'll give credit where it belongs to my colleague David Veronis for this. How real is the race among special teams coordinators in the league to give your team an edge, figure out this kickoff thing, and is that a real competition?
Well, I think every guy wants to have his team win. So I don't think it's a race amongst 32 of us. It's a race amongst the teams to put your group, your team, and be the difference between winning a game and not losing a game. So, I don't think that's never changed. The new rule hasn't changed. The philosophy of what we're trying to do. The key is winning the game. Maybe when I was younger, it was we got to do. I want to win the game. You win the game, you go to the playoffs. You win enough games, you go to the playoffs, and you get a higher seed. You get a higher seed, maybe you get home field advantage. So it's about winning the game.
So it's still in that same continuum.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, Danny, who stood out to you on coverage units in the first 2 preseason games?
There's been several guys that have done a good job. The guys that you expect, the guys that have done it in their career, Saran Neal and Duke Riley, and then guys like Quentin Bell have done a good job and stepped up a little bit. So then the last game, we had a lot of rookies playing in the second half, when we kicked off a couple of times, and, those guys being aggressive. So, Patrick McMorris, Mr. Perry, Mr. Johnson, the group, they've all done a good job. It's been a good class, and we're going to have hard decisions to make.
And with the 3 young corners, the 3 rookie corners you have with Isaiah Johnson, Storm Duck, and Maitrey, what have they been able to do and show you from a special team standpoint? Any of those 3 stand out?
They've all stood out in different areas, and they're 3 good football players.
Danny, have you decided whether you're going to keep offensive linemen on kickoff return? Without giving away strategy, because you have. Well, I mean, it's everything.
Without giving
How do you do that? How do you do that? We're going to keep evaluating the personnel that we're going to use.
Has that proved? Is that a trend in the league that teams are experimenting?
You've seen a lot of people playing a lot of different people out there. So yeah, you see offensive linemen, defensive tackles, outside linebackers, defensive ends. I've seen a lot of people.
Have you decided who will handle the majority of kickoffs for you between Jake Bailey and Jason Sanders?
It's still an ongoing conversation and competition.
Coach, you had 4 kickoff returns for the Commanders, I believe, all into the 25-yard line for you guys on those kind of dart, I don't know what you call it, the line drive kickoff approach, but I was curious how you felt about the way the team executed those style of kickoffs on Saturday.
Good. I think it's, as I said, still a work in progress of exactly what we're doing and how we're trying to do it. But I mean, this is a lot of new stuff that you're asking guys to do, and even stuff that they've been doing their whole careers. There's going to be some missteps. So, we haven't kicked any out of bounds. We haven't kicked any that haven't gotten to the 20, but it's going to happen. If you're going to try and be aggressive, hit some of those balls, those are some of the things that are going to happen. And if that's something you're doing and that's where you're going to live, if those things happen, it's not going to upset us. It's part of the ability to be able to get the benefit of the ball landing in the landing zone and maybe having them struggle to field it, possible turnover. Maybe, the worst thing maybe is, you get a touchback and they're at the 20-yard line. So all those things that could be positive for us, if there's a negative, as long as it's not a continuous thing, those are things that I think you got to evaluate and go after.
What are more effective in this new kick return world? Is it speed guys or guys who can break tackles?
Again, I still think it's too early to really tell. When you look around and some of the big returns, some of them have been by design, some of them are returners making great plays. Some have been one guy being really wrong in a coverage aspect and opening up a big play for a returner. So there's not enough plays yet to really say that this is what I think the true essence of this is going to be.
Go ahead, David.
How's Channing Tindall look to you?
Channing's done a good job. I hate singling guys out. That's why when you guys ask about guys individually, but Channing's done a good job. You can see the growth here in year 3 and really happy with where he's at.
How about Elijah Campbell's growth from 2021 to now? We saw him make a couple plays on special teams. How about his growth from the time you've had him to now?
Yeah, well, he's always been a very talented player. Hopefully we can keep him healthy. He's done a great job. It's the best thing he's done all camp, as silly as it sounds, but he's been available every single day. And when you're available every day, you get better. You get better by practicing and playing, and I think we've all seen that, and I'm really happy with where he's at.
We were talking to the refs last week, and they were talking about the onside change of the kickoff rule. How do you think that changes the approach for teams, knowing you can't do the surprises and it's only fourth quarter when you're behind?
Yeah, well, it's been a couple of years, but I was always a big proponent of surprise onside kicks. Those are things that I like. So I that aspect of the game being out of it, I don't like. But the way it's designed now, I think we're going to get more advantages to what's happening in the return game, which is critical. Because of the lack, really, there wasn't that many surprise onside kicks. You're defending something that hardly ever happened, where now that's not part of it. So the return aspect is going to be the big part. And then when you have to get into the must situation, to me, it's the exact same thing as it's always been. You got to go make a play. There's some guidelines on where the ball can end up. It can't end up past the -40, but I think you're going to see those same numbers and same percentages. And don't be behind in the fourth quarter.
You had Saran for 1 year, right? Previously, before this, what are some of the traits that you see consistent from that time to now, and how has he grown since then?
Well, he's obviously a much better player now. He was a very talented young player when I had him, and you could feel and sense that he was going to be a very good player. And now we're getting that as the and the back end of it, where we're getting the refined good football player, as opposed to the guy that's full of potential. Now he's the real deal.
Danny, I wanted to ask you a overall football question, just from your experiences about Mike McDaniel and his approach. He's got a very, up with people, positive approach, player empowerment. He listens. How different is that from the NFL that you first broke into? I mean, is it a 180-degree difference? Is that exaggerating? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've worked for a lot of people in my career, and I've worked for every part of the spectrum. There's been guys I've worked with that are just, they're not just like Mike, because that's, Mike's Mike, but very positive, they've not always been the opposite of that. But there's a lot of ways to get it done. You listen to people talk. There's a lot of guys still in this league coaching, winning a lot of games, winning a lot of Super Bowls that are still a little bit old school. So there's a lot of ways to do it. It's whatever your team is and whatever your team responds to. Again, everybody's different. Different locker rooms need different coaches. So we're happy with Mike and love where he's going and love where the team is, and let's go play good this week and get into the regular season and see where it leads us.